Pete, you win. Yes. I asked the quiz question just before we went live if anybody notices anything different about my office tonight. And Pete Kunsis has won the prize. Can anybody else recognize what's different about my office tonight? The new book. I have a new book. I've been working on this for 3 years. It won't be out till May 13. And in fact, you want to see something inside baseball? It's not even my book. It's somebody else's book. It's just my cover on a book. The cover is finished. This is what it'll look like, but this is not an actual book or my book. It's called the Meathead Method. And it's method driven. It's focused on different techniques and methods and systems for cooking. And it's a lot of stuff new that you haven't seen before. A lot of fun stuff, a lot of experimental stuff, a lot of outside the box stuff. I'll be sharing more and more information. If you haven't subscribed to my email newsletter, go do it so I can get you information. We're discussing, yes, Jazer, it is a new book. And it'll be out May 13. That's not a real book. That's just a fake. But that is the real cover. And I'm very proud of it. It took at least 3 years in the writing, but of course it's the culmination of many years of hard work. And there's some really fun stuff in there. And the recipes are really interesting. I've tried to challenge you. There's no southern ribs. There's no southern brisket. There's no pulled pork. That's all in the first book. I have brought ribs and brisket and pulled pork into the book, but I've tried to give you an insight into what the competition cooks do. So it's competition ribs, competition brisket, competition pulled pork. And then there's a lot of other really interesting stuff. And I'll tell you more about it later. I'm gathering the data together so I can share it with you. But it is available on Amazon now. So if you go to Amazon and search for Meathead Method, you'll find it. I'll have more information about it shortly. And I'm very proud of it. And it's aggravating as hell that it's going to take till May to come out. But in any case, here we are, the day before Thanksgiving. And I thought tonight we'd talk about turkey. We're talking turkey tonight. It's a favorite subject. And I see Bobby Johnson up there saying the sweetest words. I've been making your smoked turkey recipe for 10 years. Good gracious. It's the best turkey in the world, and I get endless kudos thanks to you. This is what I live for. You know, when I was in high school, I did pretty well. I was near the top of my class, and I thought maybe someday I'd be a doctor or I'd be president. And, I wanted to have an impact in the world. And, when I went through college and I found out I was really just pretty average, and then I graduated and got a master's in art, and I realized I was not as good enough an artist to make a living at it. And I worked as I was the wine critic for the Washington Post and Chicago Tribune for a number of years. I got into wine and, really stirred my culinary juices. And I stumbled into barbecue in the early 2000s as a thing to play with, launched AmazingRibs.com. And comments like yours, Bobby Johnson, have made it all worthwhile. I gave up long ago on being a doctor or a president and influencing the world that way. But I get these comments from people. I got laid last night because of your rib recipe. Geez, this is so gratifying. So I have found a way to make people's lives better, different than I thought I would. but I'm really pleased and proud. And these two books are massive amounts of work, and I'm very proud of them. If you haven't got the first one, I strongly recommend it. It really lays the foundation. The second book, the new book, builds upon that foundation and brings in a lot of fun stuff. There's a lot of Asian ingredients in the recipes. There's sous vide Q in the method section, koji in the method section, wok cooking. You know, you can cook on a wok on top of a charcoal chimney. It's fantastic. If you try to cook on a wok on your stovetop, it just doesn't get hot enough. But you can start a charcoal chimney. There's a couple of modifications you got to make to the charcoal chimney. You got to get some more air into the top. So I have you drill a couple of holes or snip a couple of sections out of the top of the chimney so air will get into the charcoal. But you can put a wok on top of a charcoal chimney and get Chinese restaurant temperatures. And so I share some of those techniques. A lot of fun stuff in the new book. I'll tell you more about it later. Tonight, though, let's do Thanksgiving, because I do have a really good recipe, and it's really, as you know, I don't just do recipes. I do concepts, methods, the Meathead method. And there are several methods to my madness when it comes to turkey. So let me just skim through them quickly, and then we can answer specific questions. And I think somebody is already, Dennis is already asking what temps for smoking turkey. I'll jump ahead and say 325, but I'll come back and explain why in a minute. Okay, so first of all, I don't do Norman Rockwell turkey anymore. First of all, you never want to stuff the bird. The bird is a thermal mass, and warm air has to penetrate it, and it moves slowly. So it's going to start with the skin, and it's going to work its way down towards the center. And when it reaches an empty cavity at 160 degrees, and that's the temperature you want to go for, 160, it's done. It's ready. It's safe. But if you fill the cavity with stuffing, then that stuffing has to get to 160. Now you have this big bowling ball, and the heat has further to travel to make that stuffing safe, because the juices in the turkey are not safe until they're 160 or so. So if you take the stuffing out, now the cavity is empty. Warm air can enter the cavity, and it can cook from both the inside and the outside. Now, the outside is hotter than the cavity because the cavity is sort of an air bubble, but it still cooks faster, and the faster it cooks, there's less moisture loss. So you want to not put... Now, what do you do with the stuffing? I have on AmazingRibs.com a really cool concept. You make your normal stuffing the way you normally do, but you add an egg or two, and you put the stuffing into muffin pans. And I call them stuffing muffins or muffings or stuffings. But you put them into a muffin pan and bake them either in the grill or in the oven. And they're really cool because everybody gets this muffin and it's stuffing. But you've got a lot. I mean, what's the best part of the stuffing? The crispy parts. Now everybody has a muffin top. It's like right out of Seinfeld. You have a stuffing muffin top. And they're crunchy and they look cool. They're really fun. So you don't stuff the bird. You leave that cavity open. And that's if you're doing a Norman Rockwell bird, which is a whole bird. But better still, cut the backbone out of that bird and open it up. Butterfly it, splay it, lay it flat. It's called spatchcocking. And now you can brown the inside. When you leave the bird whole, warm air does enter the cavity, but it doesn't ever really get hot enough to brown. And as you know, brown is beautiful. So if you spatchcock it or open it up, or even cut it in two halves. Now, this is heretical, but this is what I do now. I go to my brother-in-law's house every Thanksgiving. We've been doing this for 20 years or more. And he does a Norman Rockwell bird with the stuffing in there, and there's no talking him out of it. I break the bird down into 8 pieces. he has the show bird. He can bring it out, and everybody goes ooh and ah. And I smoke my bird. He does his in the oven. I smoke my bird, and I break it down in individual pieces. This way, I can temp each piece and get it exactly what I want. I want the legs at around 170, the breasts around 160, and maybe even 175. Legs and thighs can take the heat. They can go up to 180. It's not a problem. And one of the secrets here is don't trust the legs. Every recipe you read tells you to tie the legs together. Well, think about it. It's a bird. Tie your own legs together. What happens to the crotch? The thighs are touching the body. Heat can't circulate down in there. If you leave the thighs open, if you don't truss, warm air will circulate around the thighs and the drumsticks. You'll get brown skin down there. If you cinch it up, you get tan, flabby skin. Plus, more energy enters the thighs and the drumstick, so you can get it up to 175 or so. So don't trust the legs. And if you've bought a bird that has the legs trussed, tied together with plastic, cut that plastic and get rid of it. Okay. And I mean, you can see I'm breaking a lot of rules here, but if you're with me, you can understand why they make sense. And this is so typical of the barbecue and grilling and culinary world in general. We keep doing things the way our parents did it, and the parents' parents did it, and the parents' parents did it, the way they teach it in French culinary school. And, I used to teach at the culinary school, the Cordon Bleu School here in Chicago. And so much of that stuff we now know better because we have better instruments to measure. We understand the chemistry and the physics better. So, okay, we're not going to stuff it. We're going to either open it up, butterfly it, or spatchcock it, or cut it into individual pieces and cook them individually. And by the way, I mentioned that my brother-in-law does the classic Norman Rockwell bird, and I cut them up into individual pieces. He has the show bird. He gets to show it all. I have my pieces. I have to go over the river and through the woods. So what I do is I smoke them up. I try to time it just so we're leaving. They're ready just as they're ready as we're leaving. And they go into a beer cooler. I take them over there in the beer cooler. And then I pull them out and I chop them up and slice them up and prep them all. And guess whose bird goes first? That smoked turkey is the one they like the best. So, okay, some other tricks. Temperature, 325. Now, normally, almost all my smoking recipes, I recommend 225. And that's for a simple reason. I want you to master your tools. I want you to master your grill and your smoker. And it's really hard. You don't have a thermostat on most of them. Now, the new pellet grills and smokers have thermostats, but it's just really hard. So you need to learn how to hit 225 for 90% of what you're going to cook, except poultry. Poultry skin is not mostly. It's a lot of fat and a lot of misconceptions. People think it's all fat. It's not. It's mostly fat. So you'll need to get it up to 325 to render some of the fat and get it crispy and brown. Oh, I forgot. Let's jump back. The day before, you want to prep the bird. And the way you prep the bird is you trim off all the excess fat around both cavities. You cut the tips of the wings off because they're just going to burn. You pull the bag out of the cavity with the neck and the gizzard and the liver. The liver you set aside. That I freeze, and when I get enough livers, turkey, chicken, duck livers, I make a pate. And there's a really good recipe on the website. It was my dad's recipe. It's got some cognac in it. It makes a marvelous spread. But do not include them in the gravy, which is what I'm going to talk about in a minute. So you pull all these goodies out and you set them aside for use in the gravy. And then you salt the bird 12 to 24 hours in advance. It's called dry brining. And by the way, I'm the one that coined the term dry brining. It's been around. I didn't invent the concept. I think that it really goes back to Judy Rogers, a chef in the Oakland area. But it's basically, you don't have to dunk the bird in a 5-gallon bucket of apple juice and garlic and black pepper and stuff. They can't penetrate. Sugar is 23 atoms. Um, Salt, however, is 2, sodium and chloride. And you've heard me say this if you've come to these sessions before. Salt is the magic rock. When you sprinkle it on the turkey, the moisture in the surface of the turkey on the skin wets the salt and it gets electrically charged. And the sodium and the chloride migrate all the way to the center. Sugar cannot get past the skin. Garlic cannot get past the skin. Pepper cannot get past the skin. They're just too big. They can get into little tiny cracks, crevices, and pores in the surface, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and do a wet brine with apple juice and all the other junk and cook up your bird and then slice the breast and taste a core sampler. All you taste is turkey. None of that stuff gets in there. So salt the bird in advance. Put more salt on the breast because they're thicker and you need to go further to get to the center. Obviously, less on the wings or the drumstick. But salt it a day in advance. And away you go. I see T-Quad says, Norman Rockwell looks better on the dining table. You don't put the bird on the dining table for long. After it comes out of the oven, you got this big monster bird. You bring it into the dining room, you show everybody, and then you bring it back into the kitchen and you butcher it. You're not putting that bird on the dining table. You're not going to carve it on the dining table, are you? It's a mess. You got juices flowing all over the place. No. So what's the big deal? It looks better. So you can do a spatchcock bird, and actually, because it's laid out flat, you can fake it. I've done this. You can kind of scrunch it up so that it looks like a whole bird if you have to. You know, I don't think anybody is going to like it better. Taste. I'm after taste. Okay, so we've dry brined it a day in advance. You don't have to season it with herbs and spices until the last minute. I see somebody is here talking. Oh, there. Greg Clough. Just made your Simon and Garfunkel seasoning for tomorrow. Tried and true for 3 years. Thanks for the expert. Yeah, I have a recipe on AmazingRibs.com called Simon and Garfunkel Rub. And it's a herbaceous rub. It's got parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. I'm not going to sing. But it's an herb rub. And I frankly think herb rubs are better than your classic barbecue rubs, which are loaded with garlic and sugar and stuff like that. I don't think so. But that's me. You know, I mean, you can use any old poultry rub. You can sprinkle that on the last minute because it's not going anywhere. It's just going to be a surface treatment. Now, a lot of people like to rub it with butter, get under the skin with the butter and everything. But again, butter is mostly fat. Meat is 75% water. Oil and water don't mix. So that butter is not getting into the meat on this planet or any other planet. It just can't get in there. It may affect the surface. It may help with the browning of the skin, but it's just not going to alter the flavor of the meat. If you really want to influence the flavor of the muscle, the meat, you inject. Now, don't go crazy. I've seen people injecting with Dr. Pepper. Oh, for Christ's sake. I mean, let it taste like turkey. I know turkey doesn't have a lot of flavor and it's kind of bland, but don't be sticking Dr. Pepper. Now, if you're going to inject, you could start with something with a little salt in there, like a chicken stock, or make your own brine, about 2% salt with water and inject. Or if you want, you can butterball it. You can inject with butter. Now, if you're going to inject with butter, if you bring the bird out of the fridge, it's cold. Don't let it sit on the table and let the microbes have a party. Don't let it come to room temperature. It takes hours to come to room temperature anyhow, and it's just a health risk. But the bird is cold. It comes out of the fridge, hopefully between 33 and 39 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what your fridge temperature should be. And if it's thawed by now, it should be in that range. And if you try to inject it with melted butter, as soon as the melted butter hits the cold meat, it's going to clump up and you're not going to get good distribution. So what you want to do is you don't inject it with melted butter until the meat has been cooking for a while and it hits around 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So with your instant thermometer, you check the temp, and when it gets up in the 90-degree range, then the butter will stay fluid, and now you can inject it while it's on the smoker or the grill, okay? So what else are we going to do about our turkey here? We've dry brined, we've herbed, we've left the stuffing out, we've spatchcocked or broken it down in individual pieces. Yeah, you can put your rub on the seasoning. 325 cooking temp. And here's another tip. If you've got a big crowd, instead of buying a 24-pound turkey, buy 2 12s. First of all, they're younger and they're more tender and more juicy. But second of all, they'll cook faster and they'll lose less moisture. Think again, there's a big thermal mass. If the warm air is warming the outside of the bird, excuse me. Sorry. If the warm air is warming the outside of the bird and progressing towards the center, the thicker those breasts are, the longer it takes for the warm air to warm. Well, all right, the warm air warms the outside of the bird, but the warm air can't penetrate the meat. It's the outside of the bird that heats up, and it passes the heat to the center. So the warm air warms the outside of the bird, and the outside of the bird warms the inside of the bird. Got that? So it takes longer if the breast is bigger and thicker. So instead of a 24-pound bird with a big football-sized breast, go with 2 12s with smaller breasts. It will take less time and you lose less moisture, and the outside of the bird won't get overcooked. Okay? Okay. All right. So that's the basic core concepts. Don't go crazy with smoke. Turkey and smoke go together like peanut butter and jelly. They're fantastic together. But you can really overdo it. The turkey can get awful if you over smoke. So go light on the wood, go light on the smoke. All right, let's see what we got in the way of questions. All right, several of you have noticed there is a new book on the shelf. It won't be out till May 13. That's actually, it's not even my book. It's somebody else's book with my cover on it. But I'll tell you more about it shortly. If you make sure you're signed up for Smoke Signals, my email newsletter. Comes out only once a month. We don't spam you. Useful information. We'll tell you more about the book shortly. And it is available now on Amazon for pre-order. It's called the Meathead Method. Pete Kuntz is saying his feed froze. Oh, you're the pitmaster at Morningwood Barbecue. I know you guys. We've interacted. Yes, we have. And he's using my Memphis rub. Great. Thank you. B, whoever you are, says, I look great. I don't think so. No, I can't remember the last time somebody said that. Although, I got to tell you something funny. Here's my new glasses. I wore them out on errands the other day, and both my accountant's assistant and the lady at the post office said, oh, those glasses are really cute. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard the word cute since my 20s, and even then I wasn't cute. Okay. Okay, Dennis is asking, estimated time for a 15-pound bird at 325 whole. Whole, not spatchcocked. Hard for me to be precise because I don't cook them whole anymore. I don't know off the top of my head, but if you go to AmazingRibs.com, I've got those numbers. I put a tape. There's this massive article on turkey. So it'll drive you nuts. But it's just Google turkey, and it's the ultimate turkey recipe. And I do have a table that gives you estimated cooking times at 325. I'm guessing off the top of my head a couple hours. But for this, You keep a beer cooler handy. And if you get done before the guests have all arrived, you toss it in the beer cooler and it'll stay warm. Cool J77 is going to cook the breast to 145, dark meat to 205. Okay, couple of thoughts. 145 is, to me, it's a little slimy and a little funny texture. I mean, USDA says 165, and we've been eating it at that temperature for years. I'm saying 160 because it'll carry over to 165. Or at 160, I've done the math. There's a whole bunch of tables that talk about the safety and everything. It's still safe at 155 to 160. 145 is pushing it, I think. I think the texture may be off-putting to some people. So I would be, if you want to push it down, maybe 155 and let it carry over to 160. Dark meat, 205. I've actually done dark meat. I've let it get away from me. I didn't do it on purpose. Up to around 200. And it's still good. It can withstand it. I still think it's best in the 175, maybe 180 at the most. Those are my target temperatures. But you can experiment. At 145, you are in the risk range for bacteria. So I would, push it a little further. Brad Ledworth, good to see you, Brad. Brad and I have been communicating. He wrote a little home cookbook a couple of years ago. It's a lot of fun. He is an investment counselor for LPL on the West Coast, and I know that because my investment counselor here in Illinois is with LPL. Brad's a really smart guy, and he's into lacrosse. He's got young men in his family who are serious lacrosse guys. I think one or two of them may be on scholarship now. What's in the glass tonight? Oh, he's also a wine drinker. OPP, other people's Pinot. It's a joke that I didn't get at first. Somebody had to explain it to me. Other people's P stood for something else. Had to do with women. But other people's Pinot is what it's called. And it is a Pinot Gris from Oregon, from Willamette Valley. It's pretty good. I usually buy it by the case. It's one of my house whites. And Brad says he's using my Meathead rubs. Are you talking about the commercial ones? They're good. They're good. I'm very proud of them. Okay, Cool J7. What do I think about injecting with heavily salted butter? Yes, sure, yeah. Just plain old salted butter. You can still do the dry brine. Oh, that's something else. Watch the label on your turkey. Almost all of them now are pre-brined. Now they can take a little bit more salt, but they inject turkey and a lot of pork now with a salt solution. First of all, it's to help make the food better because salt does its magic. But second of all, they can add up to 8% of a saltwater solution. So that gives them the opportunity to raise the price. I mean, not raise the price, but they make, if it's a 14-pound bird, add 8% water. Now you've got a 16-pound bird and you can sell it at the same price. And the only additional expense is water, not feed for the bird. So check the label. And if it says enhanced or salt added, go easy on the dry brine or the injection. But yeah, as I think, Cool J, you've been here a bit. I was talking about you inject it after the meat has warmed a bit because the butter will freeze up in the hypodermic if you try to do it while the meat's cold. Bobby Johnson, last year was the first time I saved a pound of turkey and finally made the pot pie recipe. That's going to be a new tradition too. Yeah, I mean, everybody makes chicken pot pie, turkey pot pie, and it's, I collaborated with my wife on that one, and it's a pretty good recipe. Turkey pot pie for the leftovers, or turkey sandwich with cranberry sauce. Oh, cranberries! I have a fun recipe for cranberries. I buy cranberry raisins, or they're called craisins. They're cranberries that have been dehydrated like raisins, and they're sweet, but they've also been sweetened with a little sugar. And they're fun. I like to pop them. You can bake them into breads and stuff like that. But I take them and I toss them in a saucepan with port wine. Now, port wine is sweet and it's high alcohol. And if you simmer it at a low temperature, the raisins rehydrate. They blossom. They fill up with wine, with port wine, sweet wine. It's really good. A little bit of orange zest in there and a few other fun things. Go to AmazingRibs.com and look up the recipe for cranberry sauce. Maybe give that a try too. Okay. How about sous vide? Okay. Roger is talking 145 for about 14 hours. Yeah, that works. Sous vide is a really marvelous technique. I think by now everybody knows what it is, but just a very quick thumbnail overview for those of you who are not familiar with it. To sous vide turkey, you take the meat and you put it into a Ziploc bag or some sort of sealing bag, and you slip it into the water so it squeezes all the air out. Or you can vacuum seal it and suck all the air out. Once all the air is out, then you put it into a pot and you set the temperature of that water with a special device. It's a machine, sous vide. It's called an immersion circulator. But basically, it's a digital device that allows you to heat the temperature to exactly the temperature you want, like 145. And it will never overcook. It'll never go to 150, 155, because the water is 145. That water transmits its energy to the meat, and the meat rises to the temperature of the water. They equalize, and bada bing, bada boom, you're done. And now, but the thing about 145, yes, and that makes it safe. If you do it long enough, you can kill all the bacteria, even at 145. But again, I think if you want to try it, I posted something on Twitter today. Tomorrow's not a good day for experimenting, especially if you got a crowd coming over. You want to experiment with sous vide at 145. The opportunity to do that was 2 weeks ago. I'd recommend you do 155. I think 145 is just an odd texture and a little slimy, but that's me. I'm not a big fan of poultry at that temperature. Now, let's talk pork. Pork, I think, if you get it down to 135, same as you might do for a beef steak, it's fantastic. It'll be pink, but it's absolutely fantastic, and it's not slimy. So, do you need to rinse the bird when wet brining? I think you mean after wet brining. Not really. The whole concept of either dry or wet brining is that the salt is going to migrate. Now, it depends on how much salt you're using. You don't want to ever get a wet brine up above 5 or 6%. And I have ratios. If you really want to do deep dive on this, and it's getting a little late in the game, I have a ebook called a deep dive book on turkey. It's $3.99 on Amazon. Or if you're a member of our Pitmaster Club, it's free. And it's everything you ever want to know about turkey and more. But if you're going to do a wet brine, about 6% is fine. In my new book, I talk about equilibrium brines and how to get it exactly the right saltiness. But with a regular old brine, you put it in a salt solution that's greater than what you want the meat to come out. So the salt starts penetrating, but you can't leave it in there forever. Otherwise, the meat gets too salty. But the salt penetrates. And if you've got anything else in the brine, like sugar or black pepper, it's not going to penetrate, so it'll just be on the surface, and you probably don't want to wash that off. You want it on the surface. Okay? Karen Anderson says she likes Memphis dust. I do too. I don't use it on my turkey. Oh, you know what I did with it recently, though? I did some salmon with it. It really works on salmon. It's designed for a pork rub, but it really works on salmon. Try it on salmon. Cool J is saying how long to cook sous vide. This is something that's weird about sous vide, and I'm into sous vide. In fact, I'm going to be a guest speaker on on a cruise going to Yucatan and Bimini in March, mid to late March. I'll be posting information. I'll share it on my newsletter, where all the chefs are sous vide gurus, and I'm the sous vide Q guru. So we'll be talking about sous vide. The thing about it is, when I was first experimenting with sous vide, I started looking at how long do you sous vide ribs. It's all over the board. The key is you sous vide it long enough so that you kill bacteria. And the time that you do it is dependent on the temperature you do it. Because, we are all told 165 degrees for turkey and chicken. And that's what USDA tells us, because they know that if you cook to 165, you'll kill all the bacteria almost instantly. But you can kill all the bacteria at 145 or 155. It just takes a little longer. It may take 10, 15 minutes. It's time and temp. So with sous vide, the recipes, you've got to cook it long enough to pasteurize it. But now, once you've got it pasteurized, how much longer you let it go depends on texture. It changes as it. So, I've seen some sous vide, like some brisket sous vide, that goes 48 hours or longer. So this then becomes a question of personal preference. So somebody here, Roger Hardy, is going to do it for 14 hours. Not sure how he came by that number, but that'll work. You might want to do 20 hours. You might want to do 36 hours. Every different one. It changes the texture. So it's kind of fun to experiment with. And what you do is if you're into sous vide, you pick a dish like turkey, for example, and you start with a number that I have recommended. And I also have another ebook. It's called Deep Dive Guide on sous vide. And it too is $3.99 on Amazon, or free to members of our Pitmaster Club. It gives some guidelines for temperatures, but they're my taste. So you may like them longer or shorter. So tricky stuff. All right, Roger says he's sous vide the bird for the last 5 years with great success, and I'm experimenting with time. Okay, there you go. And he's up above. He said he's doing the bird at 145 for 14 hours. So there you go. That's a number that you might want to play with. I'd still recommend a higher temperature, but if he likes it at that temperature and nobody around the table is going, yeah, then fine. Dennis is asking for my thoughts on the Masterbuilt gravity grills. I got to tell you, I don't know much about them other than what I've read. We have grill testers on our team. Max Good is a full-time grill tester for us, grill and smoker. And he's done hundreds. And on AmazingRibs.com, you'll find detailed reviews, a video of them and photographs and cooking results. And if it's not by Max, I think the Masterbuilt Gravity Grills were reviewed by a guy named Husky, Aaron Lyons, who is our pit boss. And you'll find really good reviews there. I think they got generally good marks, but I think he had some problems with some of the gaskets. I think some of the gaskets were failing, but these were early models, and they may have fixed the problem. I'm sorry, I don't know more. There's so many grills out there, and I've got a guy. So okay. Billy Bryans, I'm going to try to interpret your comment or question, and if I best I can. You're cooking a 16-pound bird on a Weber kettle, and you're worried about keeping the heat away with my slow and sear. Okay. Slow and sear is a gadget that goes in the Weber kettle that corrals all the charcoal off to one side. It's got a water. Actually, if you go to my turkey recipe, you'll see a picture of me cooking. I think it was a 14-pounder on a Weber kettle on a slow and sear, and you can do it. I do spatchcock it, and I had to push the legs It was like doing a split, but I got them wide enough apart so that they weren't over the water trough, and they weren't overheat, and they didn't overcook. I laid it out so that the legs were closer to the charcoal than the breasts, because as we've discussed, the legs like to be a little more cooked than they rest. So I was able to do it just fine on a 22-inch Weber kettle. You just kind of cram it in there, but it fits. I've done it. And yes, water in the trough. Okay, this is really interesting. A lot of people think when you put water in a smoker, it helps moisturize the bird or keep moisture in the bird. It doesn't. There is, remember, to start a fire, you need fuel and oxygen. And in a charcoal grill or even a gas grill, there is so much air moving through there, coming in the vents and going out the chimney, that a water bath or a water pan is just not going to raise the humidity significantly, maybe the tiniest bit. So it's not going to prevent evaporation. It's not going to keep the meat moist. What the water does is it helps stabilize temperature, because water cannot go above 212. So it helps stabilize the temperature. But just as interesting, if you take that meat out of the fridge between 33 and 39 and you put it on a smoker, it's cold. And if you've got a fire going and you've got a water pan in there, or in the case of the slow and sear, it's got a water trough, that water evaporates and it condenses on the cold meat. Just the way when you get out of the shower, the mirror in your bathroom is fogged up. So it condenses on the cold meat. When it condenses on the cold meat, it helps cool the meat, so it takes longer to cook. It does moisturize the surface a little bit, but it cools the meat, and cool surfaces attract smoke. It's a process called thermophoresis, and when the turkey is cool and slightly damp, it attracts more smoke. So the water bath is a really good idea in smoking, but it's not really going to moisturize or keep the moisture in the meat. That's one of those myths that I love busting. Okay, thank you, Billy back. That's what I kind of thought, but shall I put a tray of stock underneath like in your recent instructions without keeping the airflow underneath and the moisture in the tray? I really like, all right, this is one of my other secrets, and I didn't get to it when I was talking about. Okay, this is, I think, the coolest part of cooking a turkey. I get a 9x13 pan or a bigger pan, and I take all that skin that I've trimmed off both cavities. I take the wing tips, I take the neck, I take the gizzard, and they all go in there. And then I chop up a carrot or two. I chop up a celery stalk or two, and the celery leaves are really good. And they're an excellent herb, by the way. Celery leaves are marvelous, especially in cream soups and cream sauces. Chop them up. Nobody uses them as an herb. They're fantastic. Use them as an herb. Play with them. Throw an apple in there. Chop it up. Throw an apple in there. Throw a handful of herbs and, sage and stuff. And then maybe a bottle of white wine. I don't do beer because beer tends to be bitter, or chicken stock, but I fill that pan with basically the stuff that you do to make a stock. So I've got the skin, the neck, the gizzards, and carrots and celery and herbs and apple and white wine or chicken stock, and it's all sitting under the bird. Now, that pan, the liquid is cool, right? What did I just say? Cool surfaces attract smoke. So smoke is going to settle on that cool surface of liquid, and you're going to get a smoky stock. And everything that drips off the bird, rendered fat, juices from the bird that melt during the cooking process, are going into that pan. So when the bird hits around 150 or so, I pull that pan out strain it, get rid of all the solids. They've given up all their goodness, and taste that stock. And it is just an absolutely delicious soup. It's a stock, it's a turkey stock. Now, if it's a little thin, I just throw it in a pan and cook it down, make it more intense, more concentrated. Usually I get lucky and it comes out about right. I don't thicken it. I don't throw flour or cornstarch in there to thicken it. When you thicken it, it sits on top of the meat. It can't penetrate it. It's got flour. The flour is a huge carbohydrate. It can't penetrate. But that thin stock will penetrate breast meat. If it's dryish, if for some godly reason you've overcooked it, you put this stock on top of it and it just penetrates and adds tremendous flavor. It's absolutely wonderful. So, Billy, I do recommend you put a pan under there and build a stock underneath, strain it, and that's the basis of your gravy. Now, if Grandma's there and she wants the classic turkey gravy, you just build a small roux. Get a little frying pan or a saucepan. Throw equal amounts of butter and flour. Equal amounts of butter and flour in the pan. Melt the butter, stir in the flour, let the flour turn a little bit of amber color, and now you can add your the stock that you've built underneath, and you've got a great sauce. And it's Grandma will be happy. CBBQ is asking if we have sausage making group. It's not really a group. I've got a few sausage recipes and some technique. I'm a sausage lover and a sausage maker, and I could live on andouille. And I've actually got a recipe. I think it's on the website called hamdouille, where I cheat and I make andouille with ham, and it's really good. So yes, there's some good sausage recipes. I'm pretty proud of all of them. I give all of my sausage recipes a grade of A, except the bratwurst recipe. I think it's a B. I need to work on that a bit. But there's a Texas hot guts in there, and Italian. Oh, the Italian sausage is right on. And the andouille and the hamdouille, they're both very good. So yeah, there's sausage recipes on the website. Gary Hammond is from still above freezing Ottawa. Yeah, here we go. I'm in the Chicago area. We had about 2 inches of snow, and it melted within a day or two. So I'm not going to get political and talk about global whatever, but it does seem to me, at my advanced age, that winters are milder than they used to be. So I got a moment here. I've run through the questions here. I want to be a little philosophical and maudlin for a second. If you love food, and I bet you every one of you are like me, you all love food, Thanksgiving is the best holiday of the year. Now, I love 4th of July because that's ribs to me. And, I love Father's Day because that's steak, and Mother's Day. But Thanksgiving is such a special time because the holiday is built around food. That's the raison d'etre of Thanksgiving, is food. It's a harvest celebration. And not only is it around food, but the menu is so similar. Okay, some of you may be doing lasagna or goose or duck or ham or something else. But many, many of us, most of us, are doing turkey. And we're also doing sweet potatoes with or without the marshmallows. And we're also doing cranberry sauce from the can or from the berries. And it's just the coolest thing because I can't think of any other society, any other nation, any other religion, any other group of people that gets together once a year and cooks the same meal. From your house to your neighbor's house to the guy across the street to the guy across the country. We are riven by divisions in this country after a hugely contentious political season. But tomorrow, most of us will get together around the table with our family, hopefully avoid the political fights, and hold hands across the country and cook the same meal because we're all brothers and sisters. And it's just, I think, remarkable. And I think it's special. And I'm so glad that Friday we don't all have to rush off to go shopping, because I carried on a crusade, and I know others did too, against all the stores being open overnight. I mean, just a few years ago, people were getting up from the dinner table on Thursday and going shopping, and that's just a criminal act. And I think much of that has gone by the wayside. And I hope my complaining about it might have had something to do with it. But I got a list of things I'm shopping for on Friday. I have a staff. I gotta treat my staffs to some goodies and family and everything. So, in any case, that's my thoughts about this marvelous holiday. Steve LaCourie. Steve, it's good to see you back. I know you're a regular. It's his favorite holiday too. And Bobby Johnson. And Bobby's got a heritage breed, fresh turkey, and he's using my recipe. Yeah, I made a mistake. And if you haven't done a fresh turkey, by the way, Bobby, two things to think about. The word fresh can be misleading. Here, not far from where I live, there's a store that I can go into and point at a living bird and say, I want that one. And they will take him out of the cage and chop his head off and pluck his feathers out and hand them to me. And I've done that once. And I came back and cooked them the next day, and it was effing awful. You know why? Rigor mortis. Animals go through rigor mortis after slaughter. That is to say, the muscles get stiff, and it takes days for the capsaicins and calpains, the enzymes, to break down the muscles and tenderize them. So if you're getting a fresh killed bird, make sure it's been killed for a few days. Now, the other thing is you can go into the store and it says fresh turkey. And this is a real criminal situation. USDA says a fresh turkey can be chilled to as low as 26 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 6 degrees below freezing. At 26 degrees Fahrenheit, it is hard as a bowling ball. How can they call that a fresh bird? And yet they can. It's legal. And so what you will find is that the stores will buy a 26 degree fresh bird, and they'll let it thaw a bit. And you think you're buying a fresh bird, but it's really been frozen. But legally, they call it fresh. So watch out for that. Personally, I want a frozen bird. I don't want a bird that's been killed 2 weeks ago at the slaughterhouse, never frozen, shipped in a truck, hopefully the refrigeration system's working, sent to my grocery store where they pull up to the loading dock and the box sits on the loading dock for 3 hours while they're waiting for the butchery, the staff to come in and unload everything. And maybe it sits in the butcher shop before it gets into the walk-in cooler or whatever. I just don't want that. I want a frozen bird, because if it's frozen properly, they have these flash freezing systems where they freeze them rapidly. And there's very little moisture loss when you do this flash freezing. It's really crucial for seafood. But I'd rather have a frozen bird that I can thaw. Now, I haven't looked at this, but there's a guy named Chris Young who's a food scientist and a fan of, I'm a big fan of his, and I think he's a fan of ours too. Chris was one of the co-authors on the 6-book set on modernist cuisine. And he is also the inventor of a very cool digital thermometer called Combustion. And he owns a company called Combustion Inc. And he has a YouTube channel and a website where he posts some really good science-y videos. And I'm very pleased. He has joined my minority of one in saying you don't need to rest meat. And that's something else we can talk about with the turkey. You don't have to rest it. There are no superhighways in a turkey. People talk about, I just saw it on Cook's Illustrated, which are no better, to redistribute the juices. Where the hell are the juices gone? They're in the fibers and in between the fibers. You cook. They're not all running to the feet. I mean, it's not like you're hanging from your head upside down. And that's another thing. You don't have to turn the bird breast side down. Again, there's no superhighways. The moisture is in there. It's locked in. It's not moving around. There's no superhighways. So just breast side up. Otherwise, you'll get marks on the breast. And you don't have to rest it. But in any case, he did a video, I'm told, last week. I haven't seen it yet. Where he says it's pretty good to cook a frozen bird. And it's absolutely okay. And it's safe. And I presume he has a technique for it. But it makes sense. If your bird isn't perfectly thawed, go check out Combustion Inc. or Chris Jones and look for his video on cooking frozen birds. Cool J77, a 26F doesn't cause freezer burn. No. I mean, it's frozen. I mean, when you freeze a bird, you typically freeze it at 0. Freezer burn only occurs when it's been frozen for a long time and it's in contact with oxygen. So you can freeze a bird at 26. No, you're not going to have freezer burn. No. And you're not going to have freezer burn at 0. When you buy a frozen turkey, it's been frozen at 0 probably. So we're coming towards the end of an hour, and Charlie Jones has wished me a happy Thanksgiving, and I thank you and send the same greetings back to you and all of you. I like to say that, it's more important who's in the seats than what's on the table. And I think that's so true of this holiday. I hope you can have a great Thanksgiving tomorrow with family, friends, or all by yourself if that's what you're doing. And that you can avoid the controversy and the fights and the politics and keep the arguments to the football team. Tune in tomorrow and watch Detroit kill my Bears. But if you're going to watch that game, keep an eye on our bright young quarterback. We got a rookie quarterback, and he's going to be okay. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Have good turkey. Have fun leftovers. Have fun friends. Yes, Gary, it is Chris Young. I mentioned that name several times. And have a good time, everybody. And thanks for coming out. And keep your eye out for my new book. And if you want more info on turkey, it's not too late. Go to Amazon. Search for Meathead Turkey Book. It's called a Deep Dive Guide. And you can get it for $3.99, and it'll teach you everything you need to know about turkey. And there's a great deal of information on AmazingRibs.com. And if you want these ebooks for free, there are 6 of them, and they go to our members for free. So, happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and we'll see you back here next month.
That's all for now, folks. Thanks for staying awake, and please visit AmazingRibs.com for the articles, recipes, and reviews mentioned in this chat with the Barbecue Whisperer and Hedonism Evangelist from AmazingRibs.com, the planet's biggest and baddest barbecue and grilling website, Meathead.